When someone goes from being indispensable to suddenly invisible, it's almost never because they stopped mattering. It's usually because they matter too much, because they know too much. And when you look closely at Meghan Markle's story, there's one name that quietly sits at the center of everything and then vanishes right when the story becomes most profitable. Every fairy tale has that turning point, that moment where the path is quietly redirected and nothing is ever the same again. For Meghan, that moment wasn't the wedding, it wasn't the engagement, it wasn't even the royal title. It was 2016. And the official story tells us that Prince Harry wanted to meet someone outside royal circles. So he didn't ask family, he didn't ask palace staff, he turned to one man, Markus Anderson. And that part matters more than people realize. The meeting didn't happen randomly, it wasn't fate, it wasn't a coincidence at some public charity event. It happened privately, inside Soho House, a space Markus didn't just belong to, but controlled. He didn't just make introductions, he curated them, he managed access. He shaped the environment where powerful people met without cameras, without records, without noise. When someone introduces two people at that level, they don't just say names and walk away. They frame the story. They control the context. They decide what's shared and what stays buried, which raises the real question no one likes to ask: what version of Meghan Markle was introduced to Prince Harry, and what parts of her past were quietly left out? Fast forward to December 2025. Meghan is launching a lifestyle brand built entirely on one thing: her truth, her journey, her authenticity. This is the exact moment when trusted figures from the past usually appear to reinforce credibility. Childhood friends, longtime allies, the people who were there from the beginning. And yet, Markus Anderson is nowhere. No interviews, no appearances, no acknowledgement, complete silence, and sources say he won't be involved in future projects either. That timing isn't accidental. His disappearance doesn't happen during quiet years. It happens at the exact moment Meghan's personal story is being sold at its highest value. Silence like that isn't passive, it's a choice. Either Markus refused to participate in a version of events he no longer stood behind, or his presence raised questions the brand simply couldn't afford to answer. When a story depends on authenticity, the people who helped build it are either showcased or removed. And this is where everything starts to feel uncomfortable. Years before Harry, long before the official narrative even begins, there's a documented detail that quietly rewrites the timeline. In 2001, a photograph surfaces from a yacht in Phuket, Thailand. In that image is a man believed to be Markus Anderson. Standing nearby, Prince Andrew. The year matters. 2001 is 15 years before Meghan is said to have met any member of the royal family. The photo doesn't prove relationships, it doesn't make accusations, but it establishes something undeniable. Markus Anderson had proximity to senior royals far earlier than the public was ever told. And once that fact exists, it opens a door that can't be closed again. Because if Markus was already moving comfortably in elite, royal-adjacent circles at the start of the 2000s, then the world Meghan later entered may not have been as unfamiliar as we were led to believe. And once that possibility exists, the timeline stops standing on its own. Before the fame, before the palace headlines, Meghan Markle was a working actress trying to break through. Her Ursum in the mid-2000s shows modest roles, limited income, no blockbuster success. And yet, during that same period, she appears in spaces that don't align with that reality: exclusive European destinations, private yachts, elite social environments, usually reserved for the ultra-wealthy. This isn't about judgment, it's about contrast. Those worlds don't open themselves. Access like that requires an invitation, a guide, someone trusted on the inside. And by that point in time, Markus Anderson was already embedded deep within elite networking spaces where introductions weren't casual, they were curated. So the question isn't whether Meghan was ambitious. The question is who helped her move through doors that were otherwise closed. Now, place everything side by side. Markus Anderson is documented in elite circles by 2001. Meghan begins appearing in similar environments years later. In 2016, Markus formally introduces her to Prince Harry. Individually, these are just facts. Together, they form a pattern that's impossible to ignore. The official story says Meghan's connection to royalty begins with Harry, but the timeline suggests her proximity to elite power structures started much earlier, with the same man acting as the common thread the entire time. No speculation is needed, no accusations are required. This is simply what happens when timelines are aligned instead of isolated. When viewed as a whole, the rise doesn't look sudden. It looks structured. Markus Anderson built his career on silence. That silence made him valuable. It protected powerful people. It kept doors open. But silence only works when loyalty is mutual. His background remains unusually opaque. His rapid rise, his early access, his long-standing proximity to people far more powerful than his publicism would suggest. These aren't conclusions, they're unanswered questions. And now, the one person who stood closest to Meghan's private journey has been erased from her public narrative entirely. That creates pressure, because when someone who knows the full version of events is removed, the truth doesn't disappear. It waits. And the longer it waits, the heavier it becomes. Markus never told his story. He facilitated connections, guarded privacy, stayed behind the curtain while others stepped into the spotlight. That discretion built his career and protected the people he helped. But now the story being sold to the world no longer includes him. And that's when everything changes. Because when the architect of access is written out, the structure starts to shake. Silence stops being loyalty and starts becoming a burden. And the most dangerous phase of any carefully managed narrative is the moment when the person who knows the truth realizes they have nothing left to protect. Markus wasn't famous. He never chased attention. His power came from something far more valuable: access. Through his work at Soho House, he operated inside spaces designed to feel invisible. Actors, billionaires, royalty, industry leaders, all behind closed doors. No cameras, no paper trails. He didn't just attend those rooms, he decided who entered them. That role requires trust, discretion, silence. If someone met the right person at the right time, Markus was often the invisible hand that made it happen, not by accident, but by design. So when Meghan entered that world, she didn't stumble into it. She was guided. And Markus wasn't just nearby, he was central. Meghan herself made that clear. In 2016, she publicly described Markus as loving, supportive, endlessly fun, someone she couldn't imagine life without. That kind of language isn't casual. It signals dependence, trust, emotional closeness, and her actions matched her words. Markus was present at nearly every major milestone. He helped organize private events, attended the wedding, planned celebrations, showed up consistently even when the spotlight was elsewhere. This wasn't someone drifting in and out of her life. He was woven into it, which makes his sudden disappearance impossible to ignore. People don't just walk away from relationships like that without a reason, and they're rarely pushed out unless their presence creates discomfort. Whether Markus Anderson ever speaks publicly remains unknown, but his absence is no longer quiet, his silence is no longer invisible, and the questions surrounding how Meghan Markle truly rose from actress to duchess aren't fading. They're waiting for the one person who saw it all to decide that his version of the story finally matters. Because people don't usually erase the most important witness to their life story, especially when they're trying to convince the world that story is real. And when the person who knows the most suddenly disappears, the silence itself becomes the mystery.